Welcome to episode 22. My guest today is Shawn Walker. A few weeks ago, he was mandated to take the vaccine or quit his job as a commercial airline pilot. He shot a video, and the rest is history. Now with over 50 million views and counting, this American, who stood up for what he believes, is making a big impact. For over 20 years, I've built businesses to support influencers and entrepreneurs throughout the United States. In 2020, I ran for U.S. Congress in North Central Florida, and now in 2021, I'm spearheading the launch of a new social media platform to embrace faith, family, and freedom. This podcast is designed to build your faith, encourage entrepreneurship, and to promote principle over politics. I'm Ryan Chamberlain, and this is Now You Know. Before we jump into our show, let me tell you about TPN. It's a new social media platform that's an alternative to Facebook. I know you're tired of the tracking, canceling, and the direction big tech keeps going, so make a change. Just go to gettpn.net/NYK. It only takes a few seconds to get your account and then download the app. The True Patriot Network is an invitation-only private server platform created by Patriots for Patriots. And its mission? To promote and protect the values of faith, family, free enterprise, and free speech. So join the soon-to-be millions by going to gettpn.net/NYK and start your journey today. Before we introduce our next guest, let me play the video that just in the last few weeks has been viewed by over 50 million people.
I've been an airline pilot for 18 years and now I'm facing an ultimatum. Not a choice, but an ultimatum. I'm being told in order to continue my career as an airline pilot, I must be vaccinated, which really means I have to choose between putting food on the table for my family and my freedom of choice. Whether you believe in vaccination is the right thing to do or not, the situation goes far beyond health. We, the American people, have fought for freedom for 257 years. We go around the world spreading ideas of freedom and democracy. We help other countries and people fight for their freedoms, while ours are being stripped away. You may think being forced to wear a mask or get a vaccination is insignificant, but when you begin to compile mandate after mandate and loss of freedom after freedom, it becomes very significant. As each thing is taken away, we face what is known as the shifting baseline syndrome. This syndrome changes our idea of a new and acceptable normal. Soon, we will not remember what it was like to have the freedoms we once did. Our children and our grandchildren will experience less freedom, and they won't have the privilege or the pleasure to enjoy the same choices our parents had or that we have. If we give into these mandates and we do not stand up for our freedom of choice, we dishonor every armed service person over the last 257 years. A disservice to the people who have fought and bled for the very freedoms we enjoy. Whether you believe in vaccination or not, I'm standing up for your freedom of choice. You may support the vaccine mandates because they fall in line with your current beliefs. But if we let this happen now, there will be a day when what you're told to do will not fall in line with your beliefs. If we do not stand together and fight back in one voice, soon we could be told where to live, what job we will do, what religion to believe, and how many children we can have. Do you really want someone telling your children or your grandchildren what, when, and how they will live every minute of their lives? It's time we take a stance. It's time we fight for our freedom of choice while we still can. Join us. Visit usfreedomflyers.org. Help support our mission to protect and preserve our freedoms.
My friends, now let me introduce you to our guest, Shawn Walker. He's an entrepreneur and an airline pilot, but most of all, a true American patriot. All right, so our guest speaker today who's with us is Shawn Walker. Shawn, I'm excited to have you on. I want to kick it to you in just a second, but let me set the stage for what this interview is about. A few weeks back, there was a lot of mandate talk in the news. And of course, the airline industry was in an uproar. You made a decision to let people know how you felt about it. And here we are, a few weeks later, 50 million plus views later on a video that you shot, I believe, in your house. You'll tell us about that in a second, but this viral video, there really has been some major accomplishments take place. And we're going to talk about that today in this particular episode. But before we get there, tell us about Shawn Walker, the pilot behind the viral video, a little bit of your background, what you do, what you're excited about, and then we'll jump into the topic at hand.
Yeah, sure. Really, I'm just the average American. I think from an average American family. My wife and I are both pilots. And we spend most of our time just hanging with family and friends and pursuing hobbies. We enjoy things like the lake and motocross events. And I pretty much just lay low for the most part. And this, the mandates is really kind of what pushed me to an edge to record that video, and it really got a whole lot more traction than I thought it was going to. It had way more impact than I really expected.
So let's back up a little bit here, and we're going to come to that. So you've been a pilot for years, you and your wife.
Yep.
You got a daughter. You had told me that, but is piloting something you always wanted to do from a kid? I mean, growing up?
Yeah, I didn't know I wanted to do it, but it turns out I did. Like, I look back now, and there were all of the things that kind of led me to that career. My parents would take me to go see things like the Blue Angels, and then growing up in Northern California, we lived next to a small airport. My friends and I would ride our bicycles over to the airport, and we'd watch the airplanes, take off all day long. And it wasn't until my senior year in high school that I even realized I wanted to be a pilot. And my parents didn't even think I was going to go to college. And I was just pursued athletics. That's it. I chased the U.S. ski team when I was younger, and they thought that I was just going to stick with an athletic career. And then out of kind of nowhere, when I was a senior in high school, I'm like, I'm going to go learn to be a pilot. So it kind of came as a surprise to everyone.
Incredible stuff. So a few weeks back, you were asked to do something that you really didn't want to do. And we'll get into that. But I want to know this video that you shot. Our viewers have seen this video. We're now 50 million plus. All kinds of platforms have seen it. It's had an impact. Tell us how this video came about. Tell us kind of what was in your mind. You sat down to write a script for it. You shot it. Just give us a little bit of background on this video, because sometimes people think that you might have been planning this video for months to release it. But tell us the backstory on the video.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. I watched kind of from afar as the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare professionals were mandated. And I had some, for me, I looked at it and it was a little bit worrisome to me. I go, well, for me, doctors and nurses and the healthcare professionals, it's kind of a standard thing for them to get some sort of vaccination. But it worried me that they were being forced into something so new. And so I kind of looked at it from that standpoint, but still laid low. And then there were talks with airlines that they were going to mandate. And a few days actually before they mandated for most companies, we were actually expecting it was going to be one of those get the vaccination or you're going to do weekly testing. And we're like, okay, it's kind of a pain, but we understand. We'll do it. And then probably 2 or 3 days before they mandated, something had triggered me. Something in the news or the media or something like that. And I sat down and I wrote the script. And I wrote it, and I really was... I was shocked. I was like, I don't even understand how, as an American, I'm actually writing this. And I wrote it, and it was probably a Saturday or Sunday. I wrote it, and I just threw it in my desk. I wrote it in 20, 30 minutes, and I threw it in my desk, and I'm like, it doesn't need to come out. It's there. And then a few days later, it was a Wednesday, the airlines came out and said, hey, this is it. It's either vaccination or termination. And that was kind of the trigger. And on the way home, my wife and I were driving, and we were both shocked. Both of us being airline pilots were like, oh my God, I can't believe it's come to this. And so I'm scrolling through some stuff in the media, and I see one of the high-level government officials, and I don't have the quote right on me, but he essentially said, for people who don't want to be vaccinated, we have to put pressure on them. We have to tell them they're not going to work for this agency or they're not going to go to that school, he goes, unless they're vaccinated. And then I think people will willingly do it. And that was his definition, was his willingness by basically taking away American freedoms. And that was the trigger. I saw that in the car. We drove home. It was about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I looked at my wife and I go, it's happening tonight. I pulled the script out, shot it in my home office, and I launched it. I probably got it out there at about midnight or so Thursday morning.
Unbelievable, and it's just taken off from there. It's just got a life of its own. I mean, it's out there moving. And the message is so powerful. Now, the message really has translated now beyond just the airline. And I want to talk about the word mandate. You hit a lot of things there. You experience what a mandate can feel like, and you've made a decision to stand up against it. But what are your feelings now that this has gone viral? You've been interviewed all over the place. Newsmax is just one of the big resources. And there's been a bunch of interviews happen. But you've had conversations. You probably engaged in things you didn't know you'd engage in. Tell us now your viewpoint, now a few weeks later, how you're feeling about mandates, why they are not going to work for the free country we live in, and what your viewpoint on that is.
To me, it's a very scary situation. The video started just because I have a lot of friends who are, the airline industry, transport industry, and they were reaching out to me. They're like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you guys going to handle this? Are you going to get it, not get it? So I put the video out just to make them aware of my position, and hopefully people were going to stand up against it. And the more I get involved and the more I hear from people, not just in the U.S., I mean, it's around the world now. I mean, I've heard from people in Germany who text my wife and were like, hey, we saw Shawn all over Germany now. And the UK, people are reaching out from the UK and New Zealand pilots. So the more I hear from people in the United States, though, the mandates have such a big reach. It started with, the healthcare employees, but then it went to the airline transport, and we're kind of in the forefront of the media, but it's Customs and Border Patrol, it's teachers, it's, rental car employees. It's any company bigger than 100 employees. And I have friends who run companies that are that size, and they're stressed out about this situation. So they're feeling the pressure, this threatening stance from the government. And then, not just there, but they're trying to reach even further. There's a bill on the table called HR 4980 that talks about how they want to mandate vaccinations for every passenger who's flying in and out of an airport within the United States or its territory. So they're not stopping at just a certain industry or a certain work group. They're going after every person, in the country. And for us, for me, and for all Americans, we have to ask ourselves, where does this actually stop? If we allow them to tell us what we put in our bodies without informed consent, without the advice or direction of our personal medical professionals, what comes next? They tell us where we're going to work, what we're going to do, what we're going to believe, our religion. Where does it really end? So I think it's important that the American people stand up now and put a stop to this, because we can work together in a better way to end a pandemic like this than just blanket forcing everyone across the country to take some sort of vaccination, whether it's good for them or not.
I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking you obviously took a very non-violent approach. There's no violence attached to this at all. You shot a video based on how you felt about what was happening, and it's made a difference. I mean, really, Shawn, this is an inspiration to an American, your story here just this past month, because it really shows that someone that basically nobody in the country had necessarily heard of you, so to speak. I mean, we all have our own inner circles and whatnot, but you've said and stood for something that really is what's on a lot of people's minds, and they obviously agreed with what you're saying. And I want to get your opinion on what you feel like. And I know there was several moving parts, not just you, but kind of that perfect storm came together where this message helped. Really, I think it's made an impact. I want to get your opinion on what you think your video helped accomplish over the last few months. And then let's talk about how people, where it's going from here after that.
Yeah, you kind of hit it right on the head when you said a perfect storm, because I tried to look at the same thing. I'm like, how did this happen? How did this big, movement start to push? And I think for the airline industry, there was 3 big catalysts. I launched my video on Thursday morning at around midnight, but it didn't take huge traction. It was a small, initial kind of go at it. And then Friday, it started to pick up some steam. But also what happened was there was an incident with the air traffic controllers in Jacksonville. There were some talks about it possibly being weather or a power outage, but there was a group of ATC controllers in Jacksonville, Florida that said, yeah, we're not going to do this. We're not going to deal with these mandates. And they kind of walked out. That was the word. They walked out and canceled hundreds of flights in Jacksonville. And that was a Friday. Going into the weekend, we all saw what happened with the Southwest pilots. Supposedly there was weather, but they canceled 1,800 flights over that same weekend. So it was, the Southwest pilots really kind of coming together as a whole. The ATC controllers, my video, and actually Candace Owens had shared my video and said that I was a Southwest pilot that same weekend. And so it kind of I feel like it just rallied everybody together, from that whole group. And then the news, of course, the media got a hold of what was going on with ATC, Southwest, my video. And that same weekend, I was interviewed with Newsmax, Fox and Friends, and then there was multiple more Newsmax interviews. And it was a huge, and I wasn't the only one. There was another organization called U.S. Freedom Flyers where they had multiple pilots being interviewed on other stations. So it was just this big push of, hey, we are here and we aren't going to accept mandates. And so I think, that was really what kind of took hold. And I think it's great because when people see a video like mine, they're like, hey, this is just an average American person who's voicing their opinion. And it just goes to show what you can do, just one person, even an average person in a company, you can start this push and you can create, some noise in the marketplace and the environment without, like you said, being violent or attacking anyone, just saying, hey, we are Americans. These are the freedoms that we ask you to deliver to us, and these are the freedoms we expect to have.
I mean, there are a lot of Americans right now that are really fed up with the conversation about mandates, period, just because of, maybe the word in itself may or may not be a terrible word, but when it attacks our personal freedoms, it becomes a big issue in the United States of America and what we were founded on. Now, you mentioned U.S. Freedom Flyers. Let's talk, though. That was one of the things that kind of kicked off a lot of this awareness really fueled some direction toward the U.S. Freedom Flyers. But now that you've gone through this whole mandate thing, I know that you're now helping, really going to set some things up to help other causes, other things. You mentioned to me peoplehaveavoice.com. Tell us about this new website that's in development. I'm going to put this in our notes here. People can click on the link, check it out. I know it's in early stages, but it's something that could really help this topic and the future of it. So peoplehaveavoice.com. Tell us about that and the idea behind it.
Yeah, so, that came up because I was working with U.S. Freedom Flyers, and they're largely involved with the air transport, plus they're involved with Amtrak and those, and they're fighting that battle. And I took a step back, and I'm like, well, what about the average American? What can we do? There's a lot of organizations out there that are fighting in the courts with lawyers, and, they're getting donations and all that. So we can help donate, but I took a step back and said, well, how can we really help? And I spoke with an ex-senator, and he said, what you can do is you can start writing your Congress, you can start writing your senators, your government, your state reps. But I don't know if you're like me, like someone says, hey, write your state rep, and I don't even know where to start. I'm like, what do I say? Who do I send it to? Do I email it? Do I snail mail it? Like, do I call them? I didn't really know. And so I spoke with this ex-senator, and I said, hey, how can we get the average American to have their voice be heard? And so together, the senator and I drafted a letter talking about how we want the mandates to be a choice. We don't want to be mandated. We want it to be a choice. We want informed consent. We want the medical freedoms that we deserve as Americans. So we drafted this letter, and the website, People Have a Voice, is going to be that simple. You're going to go on there, you're going to click on the state that you live in, and there's going to be a letter ready for you to send, and you can just send it to your state rep. The state rep email address will be there, and we'll even have phone numbers to where you can call in, and we'll give you a basic little script to say, because we feel like that's the thing. Like if I call a state rep, I'm like, what do I say, right? We don't know. But I think one of the things that leads Americans kind of they start to feel hopeless, right? Because they feel helpless. They're like, what do I do? And I know this because I've talked to a lot of friends who were like, I guess I'm just going to get the vaccination. What choice do I have? Because they don't know what to do. They're like, how do we even fight back? Like, the government's huge, our companies are behemoths, like, what can we do? So we want to give people a way to fight back, something that we can do so we don't feel helpless, which, will keep us from feeling hopeless.
Well, Shawn, thanks for being here today. Like I said earlier, you're an inspiration to many. We appreciate what you're doing, and we're gonna stay in tune with you going forward, because it sounds like you've entered into a new phase of activism for the sake of the American citizen, and we appreciate what you're doing. So, everyone, go to peoplehaveavoice.com, get connected with Shawn there. So that wraps up this episode, but there's 2 quick things to do. Just click and subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and then share this particular episode on whatever platform you're on. And remember, you can get social on the new value-driven platform called TPN. That's True Patriot Network. Just go to gettpn.net/NYK. Now you know.